This is the Hitler use of Nazi Germany, and this is the reality of modern Russia, where school children must learn to shoot, use hand grenades, and operate combat drones. Russia's calling it military and patriotic education. Through schools, organizations, and camps, Moscow is bringing up a new generation of devoted patriots, ready to fight for its expansion. This is not only happening in Russia. Putin's re-education and militarization of children is also underway in the occupied territories of Ukraine. What does Moscow's patriotic education involve, and why does it pose a long-term threat to Ukraine and other countries? My name is Iryna Matviyishyn, and every week we're explaining one of the critical topics about Ukraine and Russia's invasion. To see more of our videos, please hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications. Let's start. Raising the Russian flag while singing the national anthem. This is how Russian students have been required to start each week at school since September 2022. Once per month, children and their parents are also obliged to attend so-called conversations about important issues. In a nutshell, scripted lessons on how to love and serve Russia and how to understand its history as a true patriot. So what, you might ask? Education that instills a sense of national pride and civic duty exists in many countries worldwide, including Ukraine. Russia, however, has taken it to a whole new level. While invading sovereign states and killing Ukrainians in real time, Moscow is normalizing its colonial and genocidal behavior in Russian schools. From elementary school, Russian children are taught that their army is a righteous savior of the oppressed. Thus, their textbooks whitewash Russia's war against Ukraine as a so-called special military operation. Moscow's version of history, of course, does not view Ukraine as a sovereign country and refers to occupied territories as parts of Russia. Since September this year, Russian school children have also been taught the basics of operating combat drones. Putin, who introduced this idea, said it would benefit the country. The drone lessons joined assault rifle training, hand grenade skills, combat first aid, and digging trenches. This is part of the revised Fundamentals of Life Safety curriculum, which is now called Fundamentals of Safety and Defense of the Homeland. Starting in 2024, it will include lectures on military service and careers. This is just one aspect of a broader militarization of children that is now happening in Russia. From early school years, Russian kids are encouraged to join national state children's and youth organizations, like Big Break and the Movement of the First. A flashback to the Soviet Young Pioneers and Komsomol. These organizations emerged from Putin's orders in 2022, a few months after Russia invaded Ukraine. The Movement of the First has become an umbrella for all kinds of patriotic movements, such as Unarmia or the Youth Army, a paramilitary youth organization created under the initiative of Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu.
The idea of creating this movement is related to an increasing number of military-patriotic organizations. The Unarmia is intended to systematize them and to engage young people in military-patriotic themes.
The Youth Army, which now has 1.3 million members, enrolls both boys and girls starting from 8 years old. It teaches them how to use real weapons and even conduct reconnaissance.
Another test is the grenade throw. Moreover, they do not throw rocks or wooden dummies, but almost real RGD and F1 grenades.
Unsurprisingly, Moscow quickly ramped up funding for militarizing children shortly after it invaded Ukraine in 2022. According to the Russian state-controlled news outlet RBK, the budget for patriotic education increased almost tenfold after the full-scale invasion and grew even more in 2023. Almost half of it will be allocated to the Movement of the First, hence more military training, camps, and other events to raise a new generation ready to die for Putin and Russia's colonial expansion in Ukraine or elsewhere. Moscow's weaponization of education has also affected Ukrainian children.
Today in Krasnodon, in the homeland of the young republic, Unarmia members from across the republic are taking their oath.
This is the Russian-occupied part of Luhansk Oblast. In September this year, 300 local children were enrolled in Putin's youth army. According to Russian media, 200 more Ukrainian children from Russian-occupied Donetsk, Zaporizhia and Kherson Oblasts have joined the organization. Having occupied new territories since 2022, Russia wanted to secure ideological control over Ukrainian children using similar methods to those in Russia. This year, Putin ordered his ministries to intensify work with the youth of Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia and Kherson Oblasts on harmonizing inter-ethnic relations and strengthening a nationwide civic identity. He also called on schools to do more work on explaining the reasons for the so-called special military operation, the war that has stolen childhood from Ukrainian kids and destroyed their cities. Against the backdrop of Russia's brutal war that has killed hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians, Russian proxies are indoctrinating Ukrainian kids in the occupied territories to hate their country and be ready to fight against it.
Kherson Oblast is a battleground. It's a frontline territory. Our valiant soldiers of the Russian armed forces are fighting, defending all of us, and UNARMIA members, they are just like those future youngsters, patriots.
Moscow has also put thousands of Ukrainian children through re-education camps, many of which are located in occupied Crimea, according to research by Yale University. In these camps, children undergo military training and get introduced to Russian military equipment, according to Russian media reports.
Every day, the children prepare for the main event of the session, the Shield and Sword military tactical competition. Qualified teachers and instructors who are cadets at the Pavel Nakhimov Naval School support them at all stages.
After camps, many of these children end up forcibly and illegally deported to Russia, where they are automatically enrolled in Russian schools with mandatory patriotic education. By the way, you can learn more about Russia's illegal deportation of Ukrainian children to Russia in the Kyiv Independent documentary called Uprooted. Find the link in the corner of this video. Though re-education and militarization of Ukrainian children intensified during Russia's full-scale invasion, it actually started back in 2014, when Russia occupied parts of Donbass and Crimea. There, Moscow has been indoctrinating Ukrainian children with Russian ideology in an attempt to erase their memory of Ukrainian history, culture, language, identity. Militarization has also been enforced by Russian soldiers and proxies in Ukraine. According to Ukrainian human rights defenders, they have been training kids as young as 10 years old. The Russian Youth Army launched its regional branch in Crimea 2 years after the occupation. Since then, numerous military camps, training, classes with Russian soldiers and dozens of cadet schools have emerged. Back in 2021, Russian proxies in Crimea planned to admit every 10th Crimean school student into the youth army ranks by 2024. Ukrainian Ombudsman Dmytro Lubinets defines Russia's policy as Russification, militarization and indoctrination. In his piece for Ukrainian media outlet LBUA, he also raises concerns over Russia using education as a tool for its, quote, criminal intentions towards the temporary occupied territories of Ukraine.
Can it be considered that these actions by the Russian Federation are a form of compulsion for further service in the Russian army? This question is rhetorical.
The US State Department and media have reported that since 2014, Russia-led illegal armed formations have used child soldiers in Ukraine for combat and supportive roles.
When we arrived here and saw him, I was very surprised that even young guys, who were not even 18 years old, he's just 15 and he went to fight.
Children in war-torn Donetsk and Luhansk oblasts were reported to have performed armed duty at checkpoints and served as combatants, guards, couriers and secretaries. There are no confirmed reports that the Russian regular army has been using child soldiers in its full-scale war against Ukraine. However, propaganda of voluntary or forced recruitment in the occupied territories, and more so among minors, is prohibited by the Geneva Conventions and violates the Convention on the Rights of the Child. But Russia has shown no regard for international law. Since 2022, according to Ukrainian intelligence, it has mobilized around 6 60,000 Ukrainian men, including students in the occupied territories, also in breach of international law. If Moscow decides to wage its war for longer, it will likely weaponize and endanger new generations of Ukrainians. At this point, the only way to prevent this is to help Ukraine liberate its territories and bring Ukrainian children back home. We at the Kyiv Independent are doing our best to do more of such videos about Ukraine amid Russia's full-scale war. If you'd like to support us, enable notifications and please comment on this video. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned.